The next question, David, for you is, do you view watch collecting as part investment or is it pure joy for you? Or is it a little both?
Certainly is a lot of both. It starts with a joy. It starts with a passion. It's a shared passion with other collectors, but there's also something that is deeply personal about watch collecting. This is sort of my own. But at the same time, you can't build a collection where I don't believe it's reasonable unless you have infinite means without thinking about the value that is tied to them and whether watches have a way to preserve value. I'm not talking about appreciation, but at the very least are not fully depreciating assets. Mm-hmm. This is one which I've learned the hard way in many ways. I didn't appreciate at first how important that was, and over time learned to be a little bit more focused on, if I'm going to build this collection, to make sure that it's done in a way that really is at the intersection of my love for the watches as well as the value and their ability to retain that value over time.
Do you have any advice to collectors who are, looking to build a collection in terms of, adding pieces to their collection? I know it's a very tricky question in the sense that, sometimes passion can overpower a budget.
Yes.
And oftentimes, you mentioned earlier some pre-auction jitters when you were at your first auction bidding on your Breguet. Sometimes that passion can leapfrog the budget.
I think, even that was a good example of doing homework, really understanding the watch and what it means to you. And because it's very tempting to just go into a store and fall in love. There's something about, when you have this passion, this hobby, mm-hmm. to just fall in love with it on the moment. But I think for me, there's almost this checklist that I've built in terms of thinking about, okay, how does it fit within my collection? Are there examples of this watch that are associated with watches that really have retained my passion, my love over time? Or are there examples close to this watch that actually faded over time? And so having that checklist for me has been important to keep in mind whenever I'm considering a new watch. But there, just like anything, to not take the joy either away from buying and collecting, and it needs to feel special. Mm-hmm. It needs to feel special when you're doing it, when you're going through that process. Whether it's watches or many other things in life, you shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes. Try not to avoid the very, very costly mistakes, but also be open to this being an experience and a journey along with it. And for me, the mistakes are what I learn from the most, especially the painful ones. Mm. I think it's fair to assume that you're not going to love every watch, perhaps, that you bring into your collection, and it's okay. It's okay to admit that.
Mm-hmm. And certainly there are pieces that have been in your collection that you've bought and loved and enjoyed and worn that have now made their way out of your collection. How do you as a collector deal with deciding, okay, I think it's time to retire this piece, sell it, move on from it? I think collectors who have built collections have a very hard time doing that. I know myself have a very hard time parting with a watch.
Yes. This is, in a way, it's a delicate question because it's a delicate action to take. And by this, I mean the relationships you have with the people who are selling watches these days is extremely important. Mm-hmm. And I value them. I value my relationship with you. I value my relationship with the watch dealing community across Boston. And buying a watch builds goodwill, and selling a watch can sometimes create bad will. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just a question of, oh, I'm not wearing this watch anymore, I should just go and sell it. I think for me, there's a very strong consideration for doing it the right way, mm-hmm. Or to not do it at all. And it's just the nature of the hobby today. And for many collectors, it might be frustrating, but it's just a reality. And for me, preserving those relationships in a way that's as healthy and trusting as possible is extremely important.
So a lot of collectors, David, that I've worked with over the years will actually share with me a spreadsheet of their watches, very detailed Excel spreadsheets. Do you believe in the spreadsheet method?
Unfortunately, I feel like I'm one of those people who has taken it to the extreme. I have a spreadsheet where I log in every watch that I wear. On every day, I log in the watch that I wear, and from that yields a number of statistics. And so at the end of the year, I prepare a presentation that I present to myself. And that presentation will have charts saying this year I wore 32% of the time this brand, and 26% of the time that brand, and 13% of the time that brand. But it doesn't stop there. It also goes by watch. It goes by metal, the average, the percentage of wearing a steel watch versus a gold watch, another metal. It averages the average diameter of the watch that I wear over the course of the year, the width of the lugs, the material for the bracelets, vintage versus modern. So again, I present that to myself, and I look at trends over the years. And for me, it's an exciting way of just taking stock of how my journey is going.
Collecting the data.
Yes.
Well, I think we've just coined a new method today, the David Chang watch collecting method. You're going to have to share us the spreadsheet details.
I'd be happy to.
So David, you have many different watches in the collection here from many different brands. But one of the questions I'll ask is, out of the holy trinity, if you will, Vacheron, Patek, Audemars, do you have a preference to one brand over the other, perhaps a piece from each brand?
One brand over the other is extremely difficult. They all have, once again, a character. I talked about the Royal Oak, the 5402. That to me is one of the ultimate sports watches, luxury sports watches, and I associate it back to my father. When it comes to the watch that sort of got me comfortable, reaching a next level of spending, frankly, it was the Patek 5970G. And it's a watch that when I wear it, to me, there's all of the history of the brand, the complication, the savoir-faire of the brand that it exudes. And then there's one watch that I bring on vacation with me with my family, and I've started doing it. I started doing it last year, and it's this Vacheron Constantin Overseas Everest limited edition. And why I love it is because it's so versatile, and it's also so easy to change the strap if you want to. You just you press essentially a button, and then the strap comes off, and you just replace it. But I love this watch. I took it to a trip last year, and it was the only watch that I wore that entire trip. And about to leave for another trip, and this is the one that will come with me. And so the memories of spending these vacations with my family is well imprinted in this one.
Quite an incredible overseas piece. Obviously, a piece that is modern. This was a piece that I believe they limited to about 150 watches only. It was a piece that was incredibly in hot demand. In fact, we as an authorized retailer for Vacheron didn't even receive one, though I would have loved to have been able to help you acquire it. It was a piece that we just never even saw. It was something that allegedly when the brand released, and speaking to them, that overnight they were completely sold out.
Yes.
Within, I think, maybe a matter of hours.
Oh, that's amazing. And it doesn't surprise me. I was actually at that watch auction in New York where it came for sale. I got to try on and put on the wrist the Corey Richards.
The exact watch,
and loved it when I tried it on. And I love it here. This is what I'm talking about when you say, like, loving a watch on your wrist. I love it on the wrist.
It
feels
great.
So well.
Yeah, the entire Overseas collection. In fact, I'm wearing an Overseas today as well.
It's beautiful.
They're so comfortable. The versatility of being able to change out the straps is, effortless, and anyone can do it at home. You don't have to take it down to your watch store and have the watchmaker or an associate help swap out the straps. They're the best.
There's something really great about that, and I'm so excited about what you will do for Vacheron and the Boston watch community.
We're very excited. So the news is that we will actually be opening a Vacheron Constantin boutique on Newbury Street, directly across from our current store where we're at now. And everyone is, ready to go. The build out's happening, and we're underway. So
I'm ready.
Hopefully fall
Yes.
this year. We'll see.
That sounds amazing. And the secret is out also because the work is being done, and there's a beautiful...
Oh, there's a beautiful storefront.
Yes.
We have the temporary street sign up, and it's happening. So we're very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you
on
so
that.
much. Yes. David, you've been collecting now for many, many years. What has watch collecting taught you about yourself?
Maybe it's confirmed a number of things. And I've always played team sports. I've always been terrible at individual sports, or my attention hasn't been grabbed there. And my watch collecting journey started much more in an individual manner. And I would take my watch box and spend time with them and sort of individually and try to learn about the knowledge behind them and do it on my own. But really, over the years, one of the best things about this hobby is being able to do it with others and be able to share that knowledge and acquire more knowledge through those relationships with other people, not just through books or not just through the internet. And so I think it's just confirmed that I have this desire to spend time with other people, and escapement has certainly been a great pathway into building those relationships. And if anything, some of my most important friendships today are linked to these watches and to this hobby.
Mm-hmm. David, as a seasoned collector, what advice would you have to a new collector who, regardless of knowledge, budget, or experience, they want to start getting into watch collecting? What would you recommend to someone who is a blank slate just starting out?
First of all, it's important that you make this passion personal to you. I remember one of my mentors, completely outside of the watch world, a mentor in investing, saying, you have to develop your own philosophy and process around investing. And at first, it's going to be very tempting to borrow the philosophy and process of those around you, of people who have demonstrated, skill and performance over time. And that's going to be very tempting to anyone who comes into this, to love what other people love. Ultimately, you need to love what you love. You have to do it in your own way. For some people, it's a journey that involves turnover, buying and selling. For others, it's a buy and hold. I remember Paul Boutros talking about marrying his watches, and as opposed to dating. And so, it has to be personal to you, and not anyone else's way to approach the hobby is necessarily going to be the right way for you to approach it. But you should be open to learning from that journey and how you approach it. Ultimately, it has to be for you. And if you're entering, I think, again, it's really important to spend time on what you love on your wrist, especially if you're starting with a single watch or a smaller collection. You're going to be spending a lot of time with that watch, and you want to love it every time that you look down at your wrist. Not necessarily to tell the time, but because you're looking down at that wrist, you want that gravity to pull you to see what you're wearing. And so you need to really love it.
And going back to the comment you made about knowledge and research, one of the greatest things about Escapement, the group, is that there's such a wealth of knowledge of the individuals who are in the group.
Yeah, actually, I'm interrupting you because, I come to see you on Newbury Street, and how often do I come for 5 minutes?
Never.
And it's partly my fault, and it's partly your fault. In the best of ways, I mean this, in the kindest of ways, because you are there to teach me. Like, I will come in your office, and you'll be like, Dave, I've got something to show you. And you will spend 20 minutes describing the history of the brand. I think about that Grubel Force that you showed me the other day, and explaining the history of the brand, what they're trying to accomplish with that watch. And so it's leaning on the experts within this industry to really learn about it, and once again, to not just be purely self-reliant on that knowledge accumulation.
I can recall a story of when I was at a lunch with Mr. Jean-Claude Biver. And Mr. Biver put both hands on the table and banged the table, and he said, "All you need is love." And what he was referring to was, I mean, truly, this industry, this passion, this collecting hobby is all about passion. And it really permeates every facet of the industry, you know, not just from the watchmaking side of things, but the collecting side of things, the sales side of things. And I think that's what you get from everyone, whether it's someone working at a multi-brand store, someone working at a boutique, someone working at an auction house, someone who is a private collector. You know, there are certainly guys out there who have massive watch collections that are specific to one genre, even brand and year and vintage of a specific model. Like your experience with Josh Shapiro, I think you'll find that a lot of individuals who are part of this community, who are part of this industry, are more than happy to share that passion with you. And that's something that I think, you know, all collectors should, I encourage all collectors to do, which is, you know, send a direct message on Instagram, you know, send an email, send a text message, make a phone call. Don't be afraid to, you know, because everyone in this community is here because we're passionate about it for the most part. And that's what makes it so great, is because we can all share in this love of watches.
We do, and I think there's this desire also to bring along the next generation, if you want, the next generation of collectors. And you know, how awesome it is when we spend time with our escapement group to see these you know, collectors who are earlier in their journey and who have this great aspiration. And all I want for them is to be able to continue to pursue it and to be able to realize those aspirations over time.
On the other end of the spectrum, David, what advice would you have for more experienced, more seasoned collectors?
So I'm not there to give any advice on how to collect or what to collect, especially to seasoned collectors. But I do believe there is a responsibility to be kind to one another and to share that knowledge and the passion, and to have the patience, once again, of bringing along the next generation of collectors. And I see it when I go to watch auctions. There are seasoned collectors that I've only seen on YouTube, you know, who I admire, who are there and willing to spend that time. You know, I think about John Goldberger, you know, his willingness to sit down with younger collectors. I remember my first trip going back to this Breguet Type 20. On that trip, I sat across from William Massena, who is a great personality and great collector within the watch world. And I introduced myself and I asked him for advice. And he gave me 20 minutes worth of his time and advice on how to approach an auction.
So David, you have an amazing collection here. Some of these pieces are, you know, verified unobtainium. Most people out there who are looking at the collection, you know, are probably saying, "Oh my God, how did he get this piece? How did he get that piece?" Because some of them are just, as most have experienced, extremely difficult, if impossible to get. And people have waited years for some of these pieces. How would you say your approach is to acquiring these very hard to get pieces through an omni-channel, I would say, sales network today?
Well, often when it starts with, you know, my desire to acquire a certain watch comes about, it's then deciding, as you said, which channel to pursue, you know, whether it's through an AD. Obviously, an AD can help access watches that are in production, but not that are out of production, not vintage. So when it comes to that, or even watches in production, then a pre-owned dealer or an auction house, and a private collector could be another avenue. There are a lot of trade-offs. Probably the biggest trade-off when it comes to obtaining a hard-to-get piece in production is time, and it's the relationship. And how do you build that relationship to be considered for a watch where there's probably 10 to 100 times the demand than there's going to be the production? You know, I'm looking here at one of the Daytonas, which has a meteorite dial, and I knew that getting this watch, you know, was a huge feat and also a huge placement of trust by the Rolex authorized dealer. Obtaining that watch probably also meant that if I wanted another meteorite dial Daytona,
It was going to be unlikely.
it was unlikely to
two
come
would
through
be
the same
delivered.
channel.
Yes.
Exactly, because there's so much demand. And so there's an opportunity to buy another one through a pre-owned dealer, and that's how I was able to add a second one to the collection.
They're quite beautiful.
Oh, there's so much character once again in them, and Rolex does it so well. It's one that you can wear in so many different circumstances.
Do you have a preference, a white to the yellow?
I can say the white, because I'm not going to hurt anyone's feelings here. The white, there's something about the Panda, the way that the black bezel contrasts with the rest of the watch, with the rest of the dial. And it's also one that's probably a little bit easier to wear every day.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous watches. And of course, extremely difficult to get your hands on one of these, let alone two of them.
Yes.
So,
another one, and actually the connection started with you, is this Resonance, this also called Journe Resonance, which
one? Because there are two in your watch box.
There are two. So actually the one that's currently in production, which is the RQ, and this was launched in the middle of COVID in 2020. My relationship with the brand had actually started in your boutique, in your offices, a couple of years before, when you had invited Pierre Halimi to come and give a presentation on Journe, the brand, Journe, the man. And I remember that sort of being a great way to be introduced to the brand. But actually, what I didn't know at the time was that I had a connection with Pierre, again, through my father. So this is probably in 2019 at this point. I'm visiting my father and in Paris, and he tells me, "Hey David, there's this person that I want you to meet. I spent some time with him in Miami. He's the son of one of my best friends growing up in Paris. We would go clubbing together in the 60s and 70s, and his son's name is Pierre." And I was like, could this be the same person? And so we got sort of reconnected that way. And so the day that this watch was announced, I was very quick to pick up the phone and call Pierre and ask him if I could be added to the list for one of them. But I believe I was, within an hour of an announcement of calling Pierre, and was able to receive this at some point later.
What a story, because there aren't that many French gentlemen named Pierre in the watch industry. So
there, yes.
What are the odds?
What are the odds?
It's an absolutely gorgeous watch, and I think probably today one of the most sought after references, if not the most sought after modern reference from Journe.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. What do you love most about it?
Really, the symmetry of the watch. That there is this slight opening in the middle that sort of brings mystery to the watch, what is behind it, and it makes you want to turn it over and admire the dial, the movement, and when you turn it over, I mean, they talk about movements being cities, and this is a real city.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, and
an impeccable mechanism.
Yes. I really, when I think about the DNA of François-Paul Journe, and this is associated with his DNA, the shape of the subdials, obviously the complication itself of resonance and making it work after a failed try, in his first attempt, but also the way that he has introduced more and more complexity to the watch to improve its accuracy. There's something really beautiful that speaks to the man and his ambition to make some of the most accurate watches in the industry.
And of course, this is his modern improvement over the original Resonance, which was always in this smaller size case, a little thinner. And when he did this movement, I think the Resonance is a movement that Journe will be the man's legacy. Doing what he did with the original concept behind the Resonance was, genius. Being able to miniaturize a movement that was previously a wall clock movement and taking the phenomenon of resonance, which in this dial you can sort of see a little bit better as both times are beating at the same rate and keeping the same time. And the movements, there are actually two movements in the watch where this is one of my all-time favorite movements, I think, in the entire watch industry. I think a lot of people might agree with me.
Yes.
But you have two movements that are separated, I mean, by the thickness of a human hair. And, it's that beating and that resonance phenomenon that allows both movements to keep exact time. And there's a famous story where George Daniels, who was Mr. Journe's mentor, visited him while he was in production of the actual movement for the resonance. And he just sort of allegedly, according to the story, and this was told on my visit when I was at the manufactory by one of the watchmakers, he said, Mr. Daniels looked down at the prototype of the resonance and he, said, well done, very impressive. You're a brave man to take on such a complication. And I think that for any watchmaker, but for someone who looks up to this person, for Journe, that was a big moment for him in his life.
Absolutely.
But just an incredible watch. And by the way, this specific, bimetal color, this is a platinum case with a red dial. This is a very rare example as well of the resonance. And was this something you acquired before or after the RQ?
This is a more recent acquisition.
And how did you come across this piece?
I came across this piece through a pre-owned dealer here in Boston. Like many watches, agonized over it after seeing it for the first time. Agonized in terms of falling in love with it, thinking about it, but then wondering how to acquire it.
Mm-hmm. Just a really beautiful piece.
Thank you.
So David, I guess one of the next questions is, having looked at a number of your watches here and having had you tell the stories behind them, how many watches is enough in a collection?
As watch collectors, and being married, in my case, it's how many watches can I have without having to file for divorce or my wife filing for divorce? And there is, I say this jokingly, but at the same time, it is important to have her endorsement,
mm-hmm.
Especially as it becomes an important part of our savings and asset allocation, if you want. But I think we only have one wrist. At the same time, it is something that for me sort of tells a story of perhaps who I am when it comes to the watch community and what I love and the diverse taste that I have.
And now you mentioned your wife. Does she have her own watch collection that's in similar size and scope to yours?
Her watch collection is an outlet of mine in a way, where she will wear some of my watches.
Okay.
And she's not passionate about it. She has her own passions. Maybe that's a good thing. It probably is. And so, yes, you'll often find her wearing one of my watches.
Because that's often helpful. I know some collectors, that is like a big thing when they're adding a new watch to their collection. They want to know that their partner is,
yes,
on board with their habit.
Yes.
So that's a last segment and bit of our first collector to collector talk with David Chang. David, again, thank you so much.
You look good in those glasses.
Oh, thank you so much. I need them to read close up. But what I'd like to do now is a quick off the cuff, this or that.
Okay.
Rapid fire, 10 questions, off the top of your mind, answer them as best and as you feel comfortable. Ready?
Okay.
Okay. First question. Date or no date?
No date.
Fluted bezel or smooth?
Fluted.
Deployant or Tang?
Deployant.
Chronograph or calendar?
Chronograph.
Got it. White or rose gold?
White.
Sub-seconds or center seconds?
Center seconds.
5711 or 5811?
5711.
5711 or 15202?
15202.
Swiss or German?
Swiss.
Steel or titanium?
Steel.
Daytona or Speedmaster?
Daytona.
Yeah. Steel or gold?
Steel. Yeah.
Well, David, thank you again for having us out to your home, and showing us your amazing collection, and sharing some of these great and intimate stories with each one of your watches.
This was a lot of fun. It's not often that we have the opportunity to dive into a passion, a common passion that you and I share. And, when I go through this and share the stories, at the same time, I'm very conscious of what a privilege it is to have built this collection. And I'm extremely grateful to, all of the people that have allowed this collection to build over time, and the trust that I have received from the watch community to be able to do so. And so, certainly that's something that's really important that I'm very mindful of in terms of looking at this collection and being able to have built it.